My name's Miles. I'm scraping by on odd jobs in one of those upscale neighborhoods on the outskirts of Seattle. You know the type folks cruising around in shiny, oversized SUVs, lawns manicured like they were measured with a ruler, and everyone assuming you're either loaded or working for someone who is. Me? I'm firmly in the second camp. I fix leaky pipes, mow overgrown yards, paint fences, whatever pays the bills. I crash in a cramped little apartment that reeks of damp carpet and last night's takeout. My beat-up old pickup rattles like it's begging for retirement, but it gets me where I need to go. Life's not glamorous, but it's mine, and I've learned to roll with it. Things weren't always like this. Back in high school, I had dreams. College. Maybe a solid career in engineering. A real job with a future. But money ran dry, and so did the drive. I dropped out after a year too broke to keep going, too stubborn to ask for help. Folks around here, neighbors, old classmates, even some clients, they look at me like I'm a cautionary tale. That kid Miles, they whisper. He had potential, but he blew it. I don't argue. I just nod, do the work, and move on. No point justifying myself to people who've already made up their minds. A few years back, things got rougher than usual. Nolan, my buddy from high school, had an older sister named Liora. She was sharp as a tack, twice as intimidating, and in her early 40s. A teacher, the kind who could hush a room with a single glance. Nolan and I hung out a lot, gaming late into the night, sneaking beers from his dad's fridge. But one evening, Liora caught us skipping a school event to tinker in their garage. She lit into me like I was the devil incarnate. "You're dragging my brother down with you," she snapped, her voice ice-cold and cutting. "You're worthless, Miles. You'll never amount to anything." Those words lodged in me like a splinter I couldn't dig out. After that, I steered clear of her. Nolan headed off to college, and we lost touch. I figured I'd never see Liora again. So when my phone buzzed on a rainy afternoon, her name flashing on the screen, I nearly dropped the wrench in my hand. I was under a client's sink, wrestling with a stubborn leak. It was Liora calling. I let it ring, convinced it was a wrong number. But she called back. I wiped my hands on my jeans and picked up, wary. "Miles, it's Liora," she said. Her voice was clipped, but not as harsh as I remembered. My water heater's acting up, and the guy I hired ghosted me. "Can you swing by? I'll pay you." I froze. Why me? She hadn't spoken to me in years. Not since she'd torn me apart. But a job meant cash, and rent was due. "All right," I muttered. "In an hour." Her place was in the nicest part of town. A sprawling two-story house with ivy climbing the walls and a wraparound porch straight out of a magazine. I parked my truck, grabbed my toolbox, and trudged through the drizzle to her door. The air smelled of wet leaves and asphalt. I rang the bell, half-braced for her to rip into me again. When she opened up, I wasn't ready. Liora had changed. Not softened exactly, but less like the ironclad teacher etched in my memory. Her hair was tied back loosely, a few strands framing her face. She wore a simple gray sweater and jeans, but there was a quiet confidence in her stance, like she had nothing left to prove. Her eyes, though, carried a weariness I hadn't noticed before. "Miles," she said, stepping aside. "Strictly business. The water heater's in the basement. No need for chit-chat. Fix it and go." I nodded, lips sealed. Her house wrapped around me like a warm wave, cozy, lived in, scented with flickering candles. Shelves lined with jars of wax, some glowing softly, others hand-labeled lavender, sandalwood, pine. Old family photos lined the mantel, and a faint jazz murmur drifted from deeper inside. It felt like a home that was full of life, yet achingly solitary, waiting for something to fill the gaps. I headed downstairs, toolbox in hand, feeling her gaze on my back. Whatever this was, I'd do the job and bolt, just like she wanted. The basement was dim, lit by a single bulb swinging from the ceiling. The water heater hulked in the corner, an ancient metal beast older than me. I set down my tools. The clank echoed in the quiet. Rain drummed against the tiny window high up, a steady rhythm that made the space feel smaller, more confined. I got to work. Thermostat, pressure valve, pipes. It wasn't tricky, just a worn-out part to replace, but I took my time. Being in Liora's house pushed me to do it right, to show I wasn't the failure she'd once called me. I heard her footsteps before I saw her. She paused halfway down the stairs, leaning against the wall, arms crossed. Her sweater hugged her frame, and the upstairs light skimmed the edges of her hair. She didn't speak, just watched. I kept my eyes on the heater, but I felt her sizing me up. Not cruelly, but like she was piecing something together. I tightened a bolt, wiped my hands on my jeans, and finally spoke. "Should be done soon. Just need to test it." She nodded, face neutral, and set a glass of water on the workbench nearby. "Don't die of thirst," she said, then headed back up. It was the first non-order she'd given, and it threw me off. Was that kindness? I finished up, tested the flow, hot water running strong again, and a spark of pride hit me. Job done. Time to leave. But outside, the drizzle had turned into a downpour. Sheets of rain hammered down, flooding the driveway, turning the street into a muddy blur. My truck sat a good 20 yards away. I'd be soaked to the bone before I reached the door. I lingered under the porch overhang, weighing my choices. Drive through this mess and risk hydroplaning, or wait it out and face Liora's frosty shoulder. Neither appealed. Before I could decide, the door creaked open behind me. Liora stood there, hand on the knob, her expression softer than before but still guarded. "Don't go out in that," she said. "You'll get sick or worse. Wreck that rust bucket of yours. Come in, sit in the living room. I won't bite." Her tone was firm, but something else laced it a crack, like she didn't want to be alone either. I opened my mouth to argue, but a gust of wind slapped rain across my face. I caved. "All right," I said, stepping inside. "Just till it lets up." The living room was warm, almost too warm, with candlelight dancing across every surface. Lavender, vanilla, something woody. Her handmade candles filled the air with a heady mix that made my head spin. A small speaker hummed soft jazz, the kind you'd hear in a midnight cafe. Family photos edged the mantel. A younger Liora with Nolan, their parents, a dog long gone. It was like stepping into someone's soul, not just their space. I perched on the edge of the couch, toolbox at my feet, awkward in my grease-stained shirt and work boots. Liora returned with a towel, and to my surprise, a steaming mug of tea. She set them on the coffee table without meeting my eyes. "Dry off," she said. "You're dripping on my floor." I grabbed the towel, mumbling thanks, and wiped my face. The tea smelled like chamomile, warm, soothing. I cradled it to thaw my hands and glanced her way. She'd settled into the armchair across from me, legs crossed, staring out at the rain-lashed window. Her face looked gentler now, far from the woman who'd flayed me alive years ago. I don't know why, but the words tumbled out. "Never thought you'd be this nice to me someday." She turned, one eyebrow arched, a fleeting smile tugging her lips. "Never thought you'd keep quiet this long," she shot back. "You were always yapping back then." I let out a short laugh, surprised she remembered me so clearly. "Yeah, well, I learned when to shut up." She tilted her head, studying me, and for a second, I saw curiosity in her eyes. "Maybe you have changed," she murmured, almost to herself. The jazz filled the quiet, and the rain kept falling. I didn't know it yet, but that moment sitting there with my tea, her words hanging in the air, marked the start of something I never saw coming. The rain showed no signs of stopping. It pounded the windows, a constant drone blending with the low jazz in Liora's living room. I stayed put on the couch, my chamomile tea cooling between my palms, towel slung over my shoulder. Liora lingered in her armchair, one leg tucked under her, her gaze flicking from me to the flickering candles on the table. The air felt thick, not tense, exactly, but heavy with unspoken things. I'd planned to fix her heater and vanish, but here I was, trapped in her world, and it didn't feel like coincidence anymore. She broke the silence first. "You still remember that night, don't you?" she asked, her voice low, almost careful. "When I reamed you out in front of Nolan?" I nodded, jaw tight. How could I forget? Her words had cut deeper than I'd ever admitted. "You called me worthless," I said evenly. "Said I'd never amount to anything." She winced just a bit and dropped her eyes to her hands. "I was wrong," she said. "I thought I was protecting my brother. You two were skipping school, drinking, acting like the world owed you. I didn't know you," I judged. Her voice trailed off, and she met my gaze. "I'm sorry, Miles. I didn't know what to say." An apology from Liora? That was the last thing I'd expected. I shifted on the couch, the leather creaking under me. "It's fine," I muttered. But it wasn't. Not entirely. Those words had haunted me for years, fueling every self-doubt. She seemed to sense it. She stood, crossed to a shelf, and picked up a small candle, its glass jar catching the light. "I made this a while back," she said, handing it over. "Pine. Keeps me grounded. I think it suits you better." I took it. Our fingers brushed for a second. The scent hit me fresh, earthy, like woods after a storm. "How'd you know I like pine?" I asked, half joking. She shrugged, a light smile playing on her lips. "Lucky guess. We started talking then, really talking for the first time. I laid it out, my life, the raw version. The odd jobs, clients who looked right through me like I was nothing. How I'd learned to keep my head down and push through the days. People see me as the dropout who quit," I said, staring at the candle in my hands. "Maybe they're right, but I'm still here, trying." She listened, no interruptions, eyes locked on mine. Then she spoke. "I used to think I had it all figured out," she said. "Teaching job, fiancé, a plan. But plans fall apart." He left. The job wore me down. Now, it's just me in this house, making candles to feel creative again. Her voice was steady, but it carried a weight I knew too well, the loneliness you don't say out loud. She rose and headed to the kitchen, gesturing for me to follow. "Hungry?" she asked. I was, though I hadn't realized it till then. She pulled out a pot, pasta, a bottle of red wine. "Nothing fancy," she warned. But the way she moved, sure, unhurried, made it feel like more than just dinner. We ate at her small dining table, candles casting soft shadows on the walls. Simple pasta, cheap wine. But we laughed over it, swapping stories about music we loved. She was into jazz. Me, classic rock. Kid stuff, like the time I wrecked Nolan's bike in a ditch. For a moment, we weren't the guy she'd called worthless, or the woman who'd written me off. We were just us. Night crept in, and I glanced at the clock. Late. I'd crash on the couch till the rain eased. I was settling in when Liora reappeared with a blanket, her face softer than I'd ever seen. "This house has 3 bedrooms, she whispered, voice barely above the hush. "But tonight, I don't want to be alone in any of them." I froze, heart pounding. Her eyes held mine, vulnerable, but resolute, like she was leaping into the unknown. "If you still see me as that cold, judgmental woman," she added, "you can leave in the morning. But tonight, don't let me stay up alone." I said nothing. Words weren't needed. I took the blanket, our fingers brushed again, and I sat back down. We kept talking, voices low, the space between us shrinking. The rain, the candles, her quiet laugh, it all blurred together, drawing us closer. Not physically, but deeper. I didn't know where it was headed, but for the first time in years, I didn't feel the urge to prove myself. I just was. The rain had eased to a drizzle, but the air in Liora's living room hung heavier than ever. Candles flickered, throwing long shadows across the walls. The jazz had looped to a slow, wistful saxophone. We were closer now, the blanket she'd given me draped over the armrest, my knee nearly brushing hers. Our talk had faded into a silence that wasn't empty. It was full, brimming with words we weren't ready to voice. I replayed her earlier line in my head. "Don't let me stay up alone." It wasn't just for tonight. It was a confession, like she was reaching for something she denied herself for too long. And I wanted to reach back, but part of me held on, tangled in doubts I couldn't shake. I leaned back, running a hand through my hair. "Liora," I started, my voice rougher than I meant. "Why am I here? Really?" She looked at me, eyes narrowing like she was reading my soul. "You fixed my water heater," she said, a half smile quirking her lips. I didn't laugh. "You know what I mean. Years ago, you hated me, called me worthless. And now I'm here drinking your wine, talking like we're something. What's going on?" Her smile faded. She set down her glass. The clink echoed in the quiet room. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stood, walked to the window, and stared out at the rain-slicked street. "I don't know," she said at last. I didn't plan this. Or you. It should have reassured me, but it didn't. My mind raced, dredging up every buried insecurity. She had a career, a home filled with candles she'd poured her heart into. Me, a dropout scraping by in a dump, with a truck that stalled on cue. And she was Nolan's sister, the one who'd seen me at my lowest, judged me before I got a shot. What if this was just a moment for her? A lonely night, one too many glasses of wine, some guy who happened to be around. I stood, snagging my jacket from the armrest. Maybe I should head out, I said quietly. Rain's letting up. I don't want to overstay. She turned, eyes sharp but not angry. Miles, she said, stepping closer. No. Her voice was steady, but cracked a raw vulnerability I'd never heard from her. I stopped, jacket in hand, pulse hammering. No, what? I asked. She took another step, close enough that I caught the faint lavender on her sweater. Don't assume you know what I'm thinking, she said. You're not just the guy who fixed my heater. You're not worthless. You never were. I was wrong, and I hate that I made you feel that way. Her words hit like an unexpected punch. I wanted to believe her, but doubt clung to me like wet clothes. I opened my mouth to argue to say I wasn't good enough for whatever this was, but she closed the gap. Her hand caught mine, soft but sure, and she pulled me in. Not a kiss, not yet, just an embrace. Her arms wrapping around me like she was anchoring herself too. I stiffened for a beat, then wrapped mine around her, my jacket slipping to the floor. Her head against my shoulder, her breath warm on my neck. It wasn't lust. It was deeper, like we were both clinging to something we'd lost. Stay, she whispered, so soft it barely cut through the rain. Not because of the weather, because I want you here. I pulled back just enough to look at her. Her eyes were wide open, unguarded. For the first time, I saw the woman behind the poise, the candles, the sharp words of old. She was scared, too scared of being alone, of opening up, of what it might mean. I wanted to ask why me, why now? But the questions felt small against the moment. Instead, I nodded. All right, I said, voice thick. I'll stay. We didn't head to the bedroom. Didn't cross any lines. She led me back to the couch, and we sat there, her hand still in mine, the silence, saying more than words ever could. The rain droned on, the candles burned low, and something inside me shifted. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to prove a damn thing. I just had to be there. Morning came gentle, the kind of quiet that follows a storm. Rain had stopped, leaving only the drip from the eaves and a light mist over the street. I woke on Liora's couch, the blanket she'd given me tangled around my legs. The living room smelled of pine and lavender, her candles still flickering on the table, though some had burned down to stubs. My neck ached from the awkward angle, but I didn't care. Something had changed, not just the room, but me. For the first time in ages, I didn't wake up wondering if I measured up. I sat up, rubbing my eyes, and heard the soft clink of a mug from the kitchen. Liora was already up, out on the porch just beyond the open glass door. She wore an oversized sweater, hair loose, steaming coffee in her hands. Morning light traced her profile. She looked peaceful, but a shadow lingered, maybe regret, maybe hope. I folded the blanket and joined her. The air was crisp, the ground still damp. Morning, I said, voice gravelly with sleep. She turned, lips curving in a small smile. You didn't sneak out, she said, almost teasing. Thought about it, I replied, matching her tone. But my truck's probably half flooded. We stood there, the quiet, easy, the kind you don't rush to fill. The porch overlooked her little garden, where a string of unlit bulbs dangled crookedly over a wooden bench. I thought of the water heater, the job that brought me here, and how it felt like another lifetime. I wanted to talk about last night, her hand in mine, that hug worth more than words. But I didn't know where to start. Before I could, she spoke. I never apologized right, she said, eyes on the horizon, for what I said back then, calling you worthless, judging you without knowing you. I was wrong, Miles, and I'm sorry. Her words landed soft but heavy. I'd carried that judgment like a stone in my chest for years, letting it shape how I saw myself. Hearing her own, it didn't erase it all, but it loosened something. I shrugged, trying for light. You already said sorry last night. I'm not keeping score. She shook her head, smile fading. I mean it. I saw a kid messing up and thought I knew his whole story. I didn't. I should have done better. I looked at her, really looked, and saw the regret in her eyes. Not pity, not guilt, just honesty. It's okay, I said. And this time, I meant it. We're here now. She sipped her coffee, then set the mug on the rail. Speaking of now, she said, voice lighter. Those garden lights are a mess. Half of them don't work. Could you come back this afternoon? Take a look? I raised an eyebrow, catching the spark in her eyes. It wasn't just about the lights. It was an invitation, an excuse to see me again. You sure you trust me with your fancy setup? I asked, half grinning. She laughed a real laugh that lit her face. I trust you to show up, she said. That's a start. I nodded, a calm settling over me, a quiet certainty I hadn't felt in years. I grabbed my toolbox, heading for the door, but paused. Liora, I said, turning back. Last night, it wasn't just the rain, was it? She held my gaze. Steady. No, she said finally. It wasn't. That was enough. I walked to my truck, the pine candle she'd given me tucked under my arm, its scent lingering. As I drove off the street, still gleaming from the rain, I realized I didn't feel like the guy who'd shown up yesterday. I wasn't worthless. I wasn't invisible. For the first time, I felt seen. Not just by her, but by myself. We didn't make promises. No grand speeches, no talk of forever. But glancing back at her house in the rear view, I knew I'd return that afternoon. Not just for the lights, for her, for whatever this was becoming. Sometimes, the smallest moments, a rainy night, a candle, a hand in the shadows, change everything. And for once, I wasn't afraid to see what came next. In the unpredictable twists of life, the biggest lessons often hide not in flashy triumphs, but in those fleeting moments when a weary heart dares to crack open to the unknown. Take my story with Liora. Me, worn down by dead-end gigs and pitying stares, haunted by cruel words from years ago worthless, an echo that chained me to my shadows. Her, strong on the surface but hollowed by solitude in a house too big, where pine and lavender candles chase ghosts of lost love, and a job that drained her dry. A simple call to fix a water heater, a torrent that traps us under one roof, and suddenly the walls of the past crumble. Liora, voice trembling, owns her mistake. I was wrong. You're not worthless. You never were. And me, eyes stinging, feels a weight lift like that rain-soaked hug wasn't just a gesture, but a rebirth. This everyday fable hits hard. Snap judgments cut like glass shards, deep and lasting. But life, in its endless wisdom, always hands you a second shot at healing. Don't let yesterday's shadows script your tomorrow. Swing open the door to the storms. It's in the chaos that light breaks through. Learn to see yourself through someone else's eyes, the kind who might one day reflect your own hidden shine. Remember, real strength lives in vulnerability, in that brave whisper of stay that turns isolation into something profound, timeless. Let this tale stir you deep, reminding every scarred heart it's a blank canvas begging for fresh colors. Share in the comments, what old wound did an unexpected connection heal for you? Hit subscribe for more stories that mend the soul, and together, let's author the next chapters of our lives.